Hello, everyone. I am Padma Malikarjunan, and I am an enterprise support manager at AWS, and I am based out of Austin, Texas. Welcome to AWS Supports You, where we share best practices and troubleshooting tips from AWS Support. Joining me today is Louise Fox and Ashraf Atella from AWS Support. Can you give us a quick introduction? Let's start with you, Louise.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Louise, and I'm a technical account manager based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And I frequently work with customers, helping them through migrations with the focus on security.
Cool. And hey, everyone, my name is Ashraf. I'm also a technical account manager at AWS. I'm based out of the Amsterdam office along with Luis.
Thank you for joining us from across time zones, Louise and Ashraf. Everyone, today we'll be introducing you to some of our AWS security suite of services. We will specifically focus on how you can leverage these services in your cloud migration strategy. Before we get into the details, a quick note to our attendees online. Please use the chat window on the right-hand side of your screen to share your thoughts and ask your questions throughout the episode. We look forward to hearing from you. Luis, can you walk us through what we're going to be talking about today?
Sure. Thanks, Padma. So this week, we're sharing insights on how the right amount of security, identity, and compliance controls can make all the difference when it comes to migrating to the cloud. So we're going to start off with an intro to migration. So what is it? What are the benefits and the drivers? Then Ashraf is going to talk you through the AWS Cloud Adoption Framework. And then from here, we're going to move on to the security perspective of the cloud migration. So the different security services and features that we offer and what best to use for what different use cases. Hardening your security, so some design principles and best practices here. And lastly, a security and compliance assessment, just some kind of questions to ask yourself when planning out your migration journey. So to get started, we're first just going to talk about the different cloud types. So there are three main models for cloud computing. So each model represents a different part of the cloud computing stack. So starting over on the right side, the on-premise infrastructure or private cloud. This is a cloud environment that is available for use by only one client or organization. And basically, rather than sharing a pool of resources with multiple customers, companies can have complete access to all of their resources. So this cloud type, someone else is responsible for monitoring and maintaining it themselves. And I've seen with my customers a use case basically of where you might want to use on-prem infrastructure or private cloud for if you have security or compliance regulations for housing data off the public internet, basically. Then over on the left side, so the cloud type, this is where all of your infrastructure is fully deployed on the cloud, and you can take advantage of all of the different, all the different advantages like pay-as-you-go pricing, low investments, high availability, scalability, and of course, security as well. And then in the middle here, we have hybrid. So this is where customers can take advantage of the on-prem infrastructure, the private cloud services, and public cloud. So customers here, they may want to move part of their business to the cloud while also having an internal system housed off the cloud as well. So business drivers for migrating to the cloud. There are many different drivers for customers consider migrating to the cloud. So one of the big ones, and this is music to a lot of people's ears, is cost reduction. So there's big savings on infrastructure because you'd no longer have to maintain servers or data centers or hiring staff to maintain those things. Also boosting availability and improving security. So we've many different services which we're going to go through throughout this presentation on preventing security incidents and also modernizing data protection as well. I've also seen with customers, they want to be able to move faster and using the latest technology to respond rapidly to change. And what I've seen in a lot of customers lately is, more recently, the latest COVID-19 pandemic. So a lot of customers want to shift to more digital business models so that they can enable their employees to work remotely during this time. Just given the time that we're in, cybersecurity really has become an even greater concern for a lot of businesses everywhere. So if you are considering working remotely, there's a lot of security kind of things you need to consider: authentication, sharing resources securely as well. So determining the right migration pattern for your applications. So the migration recipe for success is to put a lot of planning into the migration, organizing all the data, and having clear goals and outcomes as well. So no migration plan is the same. Each organization must tailor their plan on business objectives, resources, timings, requirements, and capabilities too. So each workload should be analyzed individually to determine its ideal cloud migration path. And as part of the migration plan, so you need to first understand the details of your current environment, including where the data is, how it's being used, and how it's being accessed. That's very critical as well. So in terms of security here, you may want to ask yourself, what is the highest critical data classification for this application? Could it be internal, confidential, or secret? And also, what are the authentication requirements as well? So we're going to dive more into those services and what you can use there to help answer those questions. If you do have any disconnected or incomplete data, it needs to be discovered, documented, and organized before beginning the migration plan. So we have a lot of different tools that can help discover your current environment, any dependencies, and identify any gaps as well of knowledge that should be addressed before we begin to plan the migration. So for example, in this middle section here, we have a service called Application Discovery Service, and this helps to gather and organize your data. So for example, it would be collecting server information, performance data, and details of running processes and network connections as well. And then lastly, you're going to need to evaluate and classify workloads. So here you can use the 7 R's of the migration strategy. So basically, these 7 R's are going to help you to evaluate your workload and decide how it should be migrated to the cloud in the most efficient way. And now Ashraf is going to talk you through the Cloud Adoption Framework.
Cool, thank you, Louise. In this section, we will be talking about AWS Cloud Adoption Framework, which we call AWS CAF. And CAF was originally created by AWS Professional Services to help organizations develop and execute efficient and effective plans for their cloud adoption journey. If you're not familiar with the AWS Professional Services, it's a global team of experts that can help customers achieve specific outcomes related to enterprise cloud adoption. Using AWS CAF, it helps you realize measurable business benefits from cloud adoption, makes it faster, maximize value, and minimize risk. CAF basically make it easier to migrate to the cloud. To have an overview over AWS CAF, which is, by the way, is not specific to any cloud provider, it's about how to transfer your organization. CAF has these steps that helps you define your approach to meet your business goals. The first 2 that you can see here in the slide can actually be workshops. The Invention Workshop helps you align technology to business and ensure technology enables business value and delivers measurable business outcomes. The Alignment Workshop, it identifies stakeholders and their concerns, establish processes for managing stakeholders' questions and blockers. And Launches, it uses AWS CAF to develop work streams and execute them for the production cloud deployment. And the last one, Realize Value, and here we measure incremental business value. We keep evaluating ongoing business value and iterate to deliver what was envisioned initially. So now let's talk about what CAF really is. And here we can see that CAF starts with 6 different areas of focus. We call them perspectives. Each AWS CAF perspective is made of a set of CAF capabilities, which is a set of responsibilities typically owned or managed by one or more functionally related stakeholders. Each capability describes what stakeholders own or manage in the cloud adoption journey. These capabilities are standard using within the CAF itself. Each capability consists of a set of CAF skills and processes that provide structure to identify gaps in your existing skills and processes. In general, from these 6, the one on the left, business people governance, it focuses on the business capabilities, while the one on the left, in the right, platform security and operations perspective, focus on technical capabilities. And moving on to talk more about one specific perspective of these 6, which what we're going to be talking about today, it's the security perspective. key stakeholders here can be Chief Information Security Officer, IT security managers, security analysts, and any member within the IT team who really care about the different aspects of security, including identity and access management, structure your workload, and who has access to what. They're also responsible for securing data and infrastructure, putting the right detective controls, incident response, and we will be diving into each one of these later on in the presentation. Before we continue, let's see if we have any questions so far from the audience.
Hi, Ashraf, and hi, Louise. Thank you. Yes, we do have a few questions here from the audience. So this first question, this is about companies who are switching to remote work. And the question comes from our user, Joe Desmond. Thank you for your question. So, Louise, you talked about employees working remotely. Can you talk a little bit about security recommendations for companies who are switching to remote work?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Joe, for the question. So like I said, yeah, just with the new remote working landscape that's happening because of the pandemic at the moment, security really is becoming a much bigger concern. Some security recommendations I could give is making use of VPNs, firstly, because you might not know where your employees are or which Wi-Fi networks your employees will be connecting from. Using strong password policies so that they're not using weak passwords, and making use of multi-factor authentication as well, so that there's an additional layer of authentication whenever they're logging into their systems. One of the really important ones too is mandatory cybersecurity training. So making sure that everyone is educated on keeping up to date with software patches, email scams, phishing strategies, things like that. Even leaving your laptops unattended in a cafe would be considered a security breach as well. So you have to be careful of those kind of things. And also having an instant response. So making sure that your employees know if there is anything, if there's any information compromised, where they should report it to and what they should do immediately, if they should change their passwords, things like that. There has been a customer use case on this actually for Fox Corporation. So when the pandemic actually first began, many employees started to work remotely, obviously, and Fox needed to find a kind of cloud-based solution to help them have all of these different remote desktops. I think it was about 5,000 of them. So they also need to stay operational 24/7 to keep all of their stations on air because it's Fox. So they actually ended up using one of our services, AWS Workspaces, and they were able to use that for thousands of users, and that was their solution there. So that could be another thing that you could take advantage of too.
Perfect. Thanks, Louise. I'll post some links for the use case as well as Amazon Workspaces and also the incident response guidance to our AWS docs, so you can refer to them. So I do have one more question here. This question is from Ray DB222. Welcome back. Always good to hear from you, Ray. So the question is, where is the group streaming from today? This is a great question. Today we are streaming from Louise and Ashraf, or from our wonderful Amsterdam office location, from the AWS support team over there. And me, your moderator, I am from Austin, Texas. And thank you all for also posting where you are dialing in from. Looks like we have quite a diverse user group today here. We have Zer HIR dialing in from London. And then we have DJ Rio from Ecuador. Thank you for joining us today. And Ray DB222, you are from Georgia yourself. It's really good to hear from you all, joining us from all these different time zones. We're excited to bring the rest of the content to you. So back to you, Louise and Ashraf.
Awesome. Thank you, Padma. And like I mentioned, we're going to be focusing today on the security perspective from CAF. The security perspective basically helps you to structure the selection and implementation of controls. Following the guideline here can make it easier to identify areas of non-compliance and plan ongoing security initiatives. And before we go into details here, I would like to talk more about the shared responsibility model. And basically, the shared responsibility model defines the responsibilities of AWS and the responsibility of AWS customers. AWS responsible here about security of the cloud basically mean AWS is responsible for protecting the infrastructure that runs all of the services offered in the AWS cloud. This infrastructure is composed of the hardware, software, networking, and the facilities that run AWS Cloud Services. This also includes the security of our data centers, which we don't even have access to, for example. Customer responsibilities is for security in the cloud, and it will be determined by the AWS Cloud Services that a customer selects. This determines the amount of configuration that the customer must perform as part of their security responsibilities. For example, services such as virtual machines, and in AWS it's called Amazon Elastic Compute Cloud, EC2, Amazon VPC, Amazon S3 are categorized as infrastructure. It's categorized as infrastructure as a service, IaaS, and such services require the customer to perform all of the necessary security configuration and management tasks. For example, if a customer deploys an Amazon EC2 instance, they are responsible for the management of the guest operating system, including updates and security patches, any application software or utilities installed by the customer on the actual instance, and the configuration of the AWS provided firewall. And here, the firewall that we apply on the virtual machine is called security group, and they take responsibility on configuring what is allowed to be access to the EC2 instance. Let's say you have a website running on that EC2 instance. So AWS will take responsibility for securing the physical hosts and the data center where it resides, where the customer will need to manage who admin and access the server. AWS also will need to patch the server with the latest security updates and secure connectivity to the server itself using the various security services provided by AWS, such as security group that I mentioned earlier. Now, moving on, just to talk in general, and this kind of will include what we will be talking about today. It's very important to automate your security tasks during your cloud migration, and AWS enables you to, with the automation of the security tasks, to be more secure by reducing human configuration errors, and it gives your team more time to focus on other work critical to your business. You can select from a wide variety of deeply integrated solutions that can be combined to automate tasks, making it easier for your security team to work closely with developers and the operation team to create and deploy code faster and more securely. During the migration, AWS enables you to automatically and continuously discover, classify, and protect sensitive data in AWS with just few clicks in the AWS console. You can also automate infrastructure and application security checks to continually enforce your security and compliance controls and help ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability at all time. Automate, also, Louise mentioned earlier about the hybrid environments that you can have between your private data center and AWS. And here you can also automate the information management and security and integrate this with your security tools, which can be easily integrate with our AWS services. And it will securely extend your local on-prem data center to and your legacy environments to AWS. Talking about the services that we provide here in AWS, Louise, would you like to give us an overview about some of these services?
Sure, thanks, Ashraf. So yeah, as you can see here, these are the services for security, identity, and compliance solutions. So with cloud migrations, IT professionals report that their primary challenge is actually security. So if the right planning and safeguards are not put in place during the migration, or if it's not properly executed, then the migration could result in a security breach. And our goal here is to prevent this from happening and securing your applications using these services that you see here. So there are 6 pillars: identity and access management, detective controls, infrastructure protection, data protection, incident response, and lastly, compliance. And you can see many different security services here. As well as this, we have so many other services that might be very suited to migration, to storage, things like that, that are actually not listed here because they're not primarily security services, but they do offer security features as well. So we'll be going through some of those in the next few slides. And these services here also, they don't all just fit under one pillar only. They can actually be used interchangeably between different pillars as well. So going to the next slide here. Oh, we're first going to do walk you through some use cases, starting with the database migration service. Ashraf, do you want to take it away?
Yep. So one of the common use cases for migrating to AWS to any cloud, including AWS, is migrating your database from your local data center to AWS Cloud. And here in this example, we'll be talking about our service, which is AWS Database Migration Service, DMS. And DMS, it makes it easier to migrate relational databases, data warehouse, NoSQL databases, and any other type of data stores to your target in AWS. In this graph, we just given an example for you can migrate your on-prem MySQL database to Amazon Aurora databases. During the migration, and this is what we're going to be talking about today, you need to think about how to secure the connection to your database. You need to secure your data and who actually administrates the database itself. So this is one of the migration scenario. Luis, do you want to walk us through another one?
Sure. So this is Snowball service. Basically, if you're planning on transferring large amounts of data, up to many petabytes of data in and out of AWS securely, and also if migrating this data might take a week or more, then Snowball or the Snowball family is your ideal choice here. So firstly, as you can see from this diagram, you're going to go and create a data transfer job. And Snowball integrates with IAM, Identity and Access Management Service, to provide valid credentials to create the Snowball job so that every Snowball job must be authenticated. That's the first step. It also integrates with CloudTrail for API logging as well, and it keeps your data encrypted throughout the whole process. So you can also even monitor any attempts of your data trying to be accessed while it's going to your destination. Then once Snowball arrives at your destination, it securely uploads all the data to S3, which is our storage service. And you can even then be notified when the upload is fully complete using SNS, so simple notification service. And you can be notified via text message, email, through the console, through a pager, whatever way you like. You can set up the endpoint yourself. Then from here, your data will all be within the AWS Cloud, and you can take advantage of all the different security features that S3 offers firstly. So logging, different encryption methods, versioning, MFA delete. So you have to authenticate again if you want to delete something. That's just to prevent any accidental deletions mainly. And yeah, once your data is transferred off Snowball, the device is fully erased before the next job as well. So yeah, that could be a good service to take advantage of when thinking of migrating to the cloud. And now getting into the pillars that I spoke about a few minutes ago. So the first pillar here is identity and access management. So yeah, what this does basically defines, enforces, and audits user permissions across AWS services, actions, and resources. What this means basically, in terms of security, I mentioned this already, so you might want to ask yourself how you're going to classify your data, whether it's internal, confidential, or secret, and also what are your authentication requirements. So to help mitigate or prevent any kind of security risks when migrating, implement privileged access control. So what this does basically is it ensures that only authorized and authenticated users are able to access your resources and only in the manner that you intend. So to achieve this, we have our first service here, Identity and Access Management. This is a completely free service, really easy to use, and allows you to create users, roles, groups, and policies to help granting least privilege access using multi-factor authentication, and also eliminate the use of root accounts whenever necessary. So you can create policies and you can define exactly what you want to grant access for and to who. We also have another fantastic service called Organizations. It's one of the last ones down there. So another free service as well. It's not only used for consolidated billing receipts for all of your accounts, but you can also manage security permissions at an account level. So you can apply service control policies, which are basically access policies again to full accounts or whole accounts, or to organizational units. So this could be like different teams. If you have a development team and a finance team, you don't want to give them all the same permissions. You want to limit the permissions to only what they need. So this is what that can be used for. Another good service here is SSO, single sign-on. So you might have an organization where your employees might authenticate using their credentials at a different third party, whether it's through some social media or through your own directory platform, and then use those same credentials to log into AWS. So if you want to do this, I'd recommend it. It's definitely security best practice. rather than having duplicate credentials. So you can take use of SSO, single sign-on. And another one here as well to take benefit of is AWS Trusted Advisor. So this is a really handy tool that offers many different checks, a lot for identity and access management, such as notifying you whenever your users do not have MFA enabled, or if they haven't rotated their access keys in a specific number of days, or if their access keys have been exposed as well, which would cause possibly some kind of security incident to your account. So you want to prevent that. So yeah, I'd really recommend taking use of those services. And detective controls. So the larger the enterprise, basically, the harder it is to detect any issues that may impact your business or security whenever there is a migration happening, or if you're going through one. So to combat this, we have several different services here to help track resources and identify a potential security threat or incident. So the key service here that supports capturing these events is CloudTrail, down towards the end there. So this provides detailed logs about user activity and API calls made in your account. And you can create different CloudTrail trails, is what they're called, to log specific regions or to log all events globally. And then from here, you can store those logs in something like an S3 buckets or a storage service again. And you can make use of another service, Athena, Amazon Athena, and this can be used to analyze those logs to help you identify any trends and any anomalies and basically further isolate any activity as well. So this can help you find the root cause of anything pretty quickly. Another really good service we have is AWS Config. So this is really good for tracking any changes made to your AWS resources and also keeping account of all the resources in your account. And for compliance history. So if any changes have been made, you can make sure that these align with your security and governance compliance regulations too. So this is all tracked and logged. And you can set up config rules to notify you of any changes through email or paging again, or text messaging. And it can also, you can set up auto remediation. So this will automatically respond to any changes with whatever code that you've set up. So for this reason, config would not only go under the detective pillar, but also the incident response pillar and the compliance pillar as well. Another service we have here is Amazon CloudWatch, just kind of in the middle. So this gives you full visibility of the cloud resources in your account, and you can also use this to set metric filters, collect metrics, monitor different log files, set alarms if your logs go above or below a different threshold. And you can also use it again to automatically react to any changes, making it go into the incident response pillar too. So during a migration, I really recommend, it's very critical to track and monitor everything and be notified of any variations or anomalies, and also just be very proactive about responding to any events as well. So moving on to infrastructure protection.
Yep. Thank you. So we're going to talk about some of the services that will help protect your infrastructure in AWS Cloud. And here we're going to focus more during your migration journey. As an AWS customer, first we spoke about the AWS shared responsibility model. You will benefit from AWS data centers and network architected to protect your information, identities, application, and devices. With AWS, you can improve your ability to meet core security and compliance requirements such as data locality, protection, and confidentiality with our comprehensive services and features. Basically, you can implement the same security measures that you have in your own data center into AWS Cloud, and you can secure connectivity and data during migration. With, for example, one of the services here that you can see is Amazon Private Cloud, VPC. And with VPC, you can logically segment your workloads into different IP blocks and manage connectivities and access to different workloads in these different VPCs. In our DMS example, you can deploy your database in a VPC and use DMS to migrate your local database into it. You can secure Aurora using security groups and VPC access list firewalls that it's applied on the VPC range itself. AWS also allow you to automate manual security tasks, so you can shift your focus to scaling and innovating your business. You can achieve that using services such as AWS Network Firewall with AWS Firewall Manager. You can also, during the migration, if you want to have a dedicated consistent bandwidth private link. You can have a physical connectivity from your own on-prem data center to AWS Cloud using AWS Direct Connect, which provides you a secure connection to migrate data to the cloud. And you can establish using that a hybrid cloud between your local data center and the cloud in a secured way. Talking about securing data during migration, let's look at some of the different stages at data protection and things to consider when migrating. The first thing that you will see from the left is data classification. And before you start migrating your data to the cloud, you need to identify the type of data that are being processed and stored in the information system you own and operated by your organization. It also involves deciding on the sensitivity of the data itself and the likely impact that should the data face compromise, loss, or misuse. A key AWS feature that supports data classification is resource tagging, for example. It essentially provides the ability to apply custom-defined tags for resources, which you can then use to group your resources based on these tags. We're going to talk about more later on. The second stage here is encryption or tokenization. After we classified our data, we need to decide which data needs to be encrypted and whether it needs to be encrypted at rest or at transit, or even both. To encrypt data, you need encryption keys, you need certificates, and AWS provides you with the services to manage those. Talking about protecting data at rest, and when we talk about data at rest, we refer to the data that is being stored in a physical or logical medium. Examples might be files stored in a file server, records and tables in a database, data in cache, logical hard disk like the ABS that we have in AWS. Encryption data at rest will prevent data visibility in the event of unauthorized access in the examples that we spoke about with Snowball and migrating data to Aurora. Protecting data in transit. Data in transit or in motion is the data that's being moved from one location to another location. For example, the data transmitted from your local data center, from your database in your local data center to Amazon Aurora in the cloud, or traffic coming to your workload from the internet. And the data at transit can be encrypted using secure protocols and connections such as HTTPS, SSL, TLS, and others. And the last one is data backup, replications, and recovery. Having backups of your data and replications across multiple locations will help you recover faster. Backup solutions require careful consideration of existing IT investments, the recovery objectives, and availability of your resources. And benefits of backing up data and replications include data durability, scalability, and recovery time. It minimizes downtime and many other benefits of it. So now let's talk about some of the AWS services that can help you with data protection. And we provide you with various services to cover the different stages of data protection. Macie is another full managed data security and privacy service which is used for data classification. It uses machine learning and pattern matching to discover and protect customer-sensitive data in AWS. The second tool, which is using to manage keys, is AWS KMS and Cloud HSM, and it's an encryption managed services that makes it easier for you to create, control, and use encryption keys. It also integrates. They also integrates easily with other services such as S3, CloudTrail, and our certificate management service ACM. Also with Cloud HSM, it provides you with a hardware secure module for managing your keys. You can also perform cryptographic operations within the HSM. And in our DMS example, for example, to take it as an example, AWS DMS uses KMS, which is our key management service, for encryption keys and to encrypt the storage. At the same thing, we can utilize these services with the Snowball scenario. You can also encrypt the traffic using these keys and encrypt it using SSL during data in transit. KMS also integrates with the Amazon S3, which is our object storage service. It integrates with the ABS and Amazon Glacier. And Amazon Glacier, it's a secure, durable, and extremely low-cost storage for data. And it's used for archive. And here you can use KMS to encrypt data at rest. You can encrypt your S3 bucket using KMS when you import your data from Snowball in that migration example that Luis spoke about. Also with AWS Certificate Manager, ACM, It helps you to generate certificates used for establishing encrypted transport between systems. ACM integrates with our different load balancers, like application load balancers and network load balancers, and it integrates with CloudFront, which is our fully managed CDN service. And the last one I'm going to talk about, which is AWS VPN. And our managed VPN, it provides an encrypted connection to extend your on-prem data center to AWS and securely connect your end users to your resources in AWS Cloud. Meaning that you can have actually different options to have a secured encrypted connectivity, whether you can do it over the internet using our managed VPN solution, or you can actually build it on top of Direct Connect to have an encrypted tunnel over a public virtual interface there. So then, now that we spoke about some of the data protection services, we're going to move to the next stage, which is incident response. And here we're going to talk about some of the AWS services that help you mitigate unplanned interruptions during your migration. Initially, Louise covered some of the detective services, such as AWS Config and Amazon CloudWatch, which you can use to track, monitor, and audit events. And if these tools identify an event which is analyzed and qualified as an incident, that event will trigger a process and any appropriate responses action necessary to mitigate the incident. One of the services that we're going to talk about today for incident response is Amazon Detective. Amazon Detective, it makes it easier to analyze, investigate, and quickly identify the root cause of potential security issues or suspicious activities on your account. It collects data from your AWS resources, basically, and then in the background, it uses machine learning to build a link for the set of data that will help you to easily conduct faster and more efficient security investigations. For example, during your migration, you want to make sure that data connections to the cloud coming from the right IP addresses. Amazon Detective here will collect data about IP addresses, AWS accounts, EC2 instances used, and it provides a detailed visualization of the activities associated with these resources. So it will help you to get to the root cause of any potential risks. Then the second one is AWS Security Hub, which we touched base with it previously, and it's a cloud security posture management service. It performs security best practices checks, it aggregates alerts, and enables automated remediation. And that's why we want to bring it up here in the incident response. Security Hub, it integrates with different AWS services such as Amazon Macie, IAM Access Analyzer, and AWS Systems Manager. It conducts automated security checks to take an action to remediate from a security incident. It also even allows you to make sure that your findings are routed to the right people you can integrate it with the chat, ticketing, incident management, governance, risk, and compliance tools, as well as security information and event management tools. This is an overview about some of our services, but before we move to the next section, we're going to stop again to see if there's any questions from the audience.
Thank you, Ashraf. We do have a few questions here from the audience. Let's start with the first one. This is about learning at AWS, and this question is about what is a good place to start learning and certifications that we can take to be a cloud engineer. This question comes from Cartman ZZ Nubis. Thank you so much for your question. Ashraf, anything you want to add?
About the practitioner question.
Yes.
Yeah. So the practitioner exam is a good, if you're very new to AWS Cloud, it's a good start to learn about our different services because it gives you an overview about all the services that we have and what each service do. So it can help you to get started with AWS and to know which service to start with. And from there, you can start taking more advanced certificates and study for example, the Solution Architect Associate exam or the SysOps exam and so on. And we also have specialty exams focused on security, networking, and such. And we have it now for a lot of technologies. So, but practitioner, it's a good start to know about our services.
Got it. And I'll share a link to our certifications page. It'll show you what are some of the advanced courses that you can take either across all different services, such as the professional cert, or if you want to specialize security, databases, and so on. I'll paste a link to that on our chat window here shortly. Okay, so this next question comes from our user, Rela Chahe. I hope I pronounced that correctly. This question is, Louise, you shared a lot of information about services and tools in security. So the question is, do you recommend all of these services when migrating or a select few?
So yeah, there's a lot of security services on that one slide, and I see why it could be a bit overwhelming. I just more wanted to give you an overview of everything we offer. But of course, you don't have to take advantage of all of them. It really depends on what your business requirements are and what best suits, just what applications you have and what exactly you're trying to secure as well. So a question to kind of ask yourself is, what is your overall risk assessment? And from there, kind of work backwards and see, how exactly you want to provide access to that information. Do you have an internal infrastructure, or is it internet facing? We could dive right into this in a whole new session. There's a lot to go through, but in short, you don't have to use all the services. It really depends on what exactly your business needs.
Wonderful. So start with your risk assessment and ask what is the business use case and work backwards from that. That's wonderful. Thank you, Louise. This next question comes from the Spec 007. Thank you for your question. This question is, does AWS have a public repository of remediation scripts we can use for AWS config?
Yes, actually, we do. So I spoke about this briefly when I was talking about config, and I did say that it's possible to use auto remediation. So we actually have a public repository on GitHub, which I'll get Padma to put a link in for the chat soon. But from there, we offer multiple different use cases that config can actually track through your resources. So for example, with S3, our storage service, it can check if your S3 bucket has encryption enabled or versioning enabled or logging enabled. They're all three different use cases. And for your security requirements, you might want those things. So if for any reason they're not configured, there is auto remediation that you can actually just start using right away without having to develop any of your own code. And it will help you change that without any manual intervention. Same with if you have an instance, an EC2 instance with a public IP address, config can stop or terminate that instance or whatever you'd like it to do. Same with any unapproved instance types or anything like that. There's a whole library of different auto remediation scripts that you can take advantage of. So you can take a look through that link.
Perfect. All right, back to you, Louise and Ashraf.
Great, thank you. So now moving on to hardening security, we're just going to go through some kind of different best practices here that we'd recommend whenever you're considering how you're going to migrate to the cloud. And these will just help you kind of strengthen your systems so you'll be ready for the whole migration. So the first one here is implementing a strong identity foundation. So this would include, I've mentioned some of these briefly already, but implementing the security best practice of principle of least privilege. So rather than giving full access to everyone, you're only going to grant access of exactly what's needed. So you can do this with the identity and access management service to specific services or resources. This will also include enforcing separation of duties. So separate credentials for different jobs. What I was saying about if you had a development team or a finance team, you could give them different permissions. Enforcing the use of multi-factor authentication, MFA, for all of your users. So this is just an extra layer of security when they're using authentication. And also taking advantage of single sign-on as well, as I mentioned before. So your users can authenticate into roles using federation and from there have access to the AWS environment. Next is enable traceability. So even with the strong identity federation in place, logging all activity in your environment is still really important for just to know who's doing what in your account, whether it's for auditing purposes or troubleshooting or in case of breach. So very critical to just track and monitor everything during a migration. And as we mentioned, we offer lots of different monitoring and logging tooling to log API activity, configuration changes to your resources, IP traffic coming in and out of your network, and much more in real time or near real time. And these logs can be integrated with your systems, whether they're different systems within AWS or third-party systems as well to automatically respond and take action. Next, apply security at all layers. So this is where you can ask yourself, do you have an internal or internet-facing application? And what you're going to want to do is apply a defense in depth approach. So this is another security best practice that we recommend. And rather than just focusing on protecting a single layer of your application, you're going to want to apply security at all layers. So the edge network, the subnets, the load balancers, every instance, operating system, application, all that. So we offer multiple different services there, and you can build your secure application to be as secure as you want. Automate security best practices. So automation can really just save time and keep everyone on target the whole way throughout a migration. And it can also help improve technical alignment as well between the different platforms. So what this does is it gives you the ability to security scale more rapidly and cost effectively, and you can implement an alarming system to notify you when needed and automate appropriate actions to specific events as well, wherever possible. Protect data in transit and at rest. So Ashraf talked you through this already. So for your migration plan, you can ask yourself, is there a requirement to encrypt my data at rest? Is there a requirement to encrypt my data in transit? Always secure your data to prevent any data leaks, malicious access, or just human error as well. So Ashraf talked you through here, encryption, tokenization, access control as well. Keep people away from data. So this would be reducing the risk of human error whenever handling sensitive data, and this reduces or eliminates the need for any manual processing of data. Just keep your server and database snapshots encrypted and just keep all of your data secure. And lastly, prepare for security incidents. So always prepare for an incident by having an incident management and investigation processes in place during a migration that best align with your organizational requirements. So you can prepare for any of these types of potential incidents by applying automation where possible, have alarming set up for different types of events to notify you, logging, monitoring to find the root cause of events, and also performing a post-incident analysis as well to prevent any similar event from recurring. As myself and Ashraf, technical account managers, we often help our customers prepare for these things by holding game days, testing different processes and applications within your environment to ensure that everything is hopefully going to go as planned. So what I always say here is just always be paranoid whenever it comes to preparing for any of these kind of events, because with security, you just, it's good to prepare. And now moving on to one of our last slides here, the security assessment. So first, I'm just going to quickly walk you through the simple 3-step approach that we have. So migrating hundreds or thousands of workloads requires coordination and implementation across multiple disciplines and teams. And AWS approaches this large-scale migration in 3 different phases. So assess, mobilize, and migrate and modernize. And each phase here builds on the previous one. So the first phase begins with a cloud readiness assessment of your enterprise's current state. And this will give you a more clear picture of what you will migrate as a business case for your migration and the total cost of ownership of the migration as well. And this assessment phase is actually based on the Cloud Adoption Framework that Ashraf was mentioning earlier, where one perspective is security. So here you can outline your security requirements. Then the goal of the mobilize phase is to build a kind of foundational capability and begin the hands-on migration experience focused on security and automation as well. And in this phase, you will migrate a small amount of applications to the cloud and just making sure that everything goes as planned, and having these defined set of activities across 8 different work streams, as you can see in the diagram. And then lastly, the migrate phase uses the patterns, processes, the tools, the resources, everything that you've defined and tested in the mobilize phase to plan the migration applications at scale. And for our last slide here, so is this an so these are some questions that you may ask yourself when putting together your own migration plan. So I've kind of asked these throughout the presentation as well, but just to have them all kind of in front of you. Is this an internet or internal facing application? So Here, you can use the different security service that we went through to decide how best to secure your application, depending on who has access to it. Number 2, what is the highest critical data classification processed or stored by this application? So here you can apply the different identity and access management services that we talked about. And same for question 3, describe authentication requirements. So again, you can use identity and access management, organizational policies as well. Number 4, is there a requirement to encrypt data at rest? And 5, is there a requirement to encrypt data in transit? So Ashraf talked you through the different data protection services we have and what you can do there to encrypt and tokenize your data. What is my overall risk tolerance is another really good question. So this gives you a clear understanding of your risk language and responsibilities across the organization. And here you can apply the defense in depth approach I was talking about and different detective and preventative controls as well. Is my application hooked into a security monitoring solution, such as a third party like Splunk? And how are these logs captured? So here you can look into the different logging and monitoring services we discussed, and you can even apply some auto remediation or notifications as well to notify you of the different logs. And lastly, what are my data backup requirements? So we've many different storage services as well that you can actually use for migrating to the cloud, and also when your data is all on the cloud that you can take advantage of. Okay. Do we have time for more questions from the audience? Or
Hi, Louise. Hi, Ashraf. Thanks for sharing all of that here with us today. I don't see more further questions here from the audience. And thanks for sharing your knowledge with us today. I do want to acknowledge a few more locations that our users have shared today. Rilla Hay is joining us from Portugal, Ron Becker from Cape Town, South Africa, and Cartman Zizi Nobis from New York. Thank you for joining us from across time zones, everybody. It's great to have you all here, and thank you for all the wonderful questions today. If there were any questions that were not answered today, please post them on forums.aws.amazon.com. And if there are any questions or feedback you have for us, please email them to awssupportsyou@amazon.com. We want to hear from you and tell us what else you would like to see on the show. Thank you for joining us today from AWS Supports You, and happy cloud computing.